So welcome everybody. My name is Kelly Casey. I'm a person director, planner, and facilitator, and I'm also a project coordinator. Is this loud enough? Okay. I'm also the project coordinator for the Y-Way demonstration project, which is just completed as of March 31st, 2018. So we're really happy and excited to be able to tell you how it went, what we've learned, and where we're going to be going from here, and hopefully inspire all of you, families and agencies and individuals to potentially jump on the bandwagon and start planning. Before we get going, I just want to say a quick thank you to all the partnership for Y-Way. So of course, Jeff from Christian Horizons, who brings the best food every time. We eat every 6 months. The Y-Way events have been going on for 3 to 4 years now. So every single time, without fail, Jeff brings great food. And then we have all our other partners, all the other JS partners. So we have Community Living York South, Kathy's here this evening, Meta, Vita, and Rena, as well as York Support Services, who have been great partners and have always supported us and sometimes thrown in some money to keep us going and on task. So thank you, everybody. Before we begin, I'm going to have the panelists mention who they are and their relationship to the project. So I'll pass the mic down.
Hi, this is Gordon. So I'm the father of my secretary, who's in the technology model. Okay. So it's one of the second model program. So we have 3 separate. We have 3 primary service models, so we'll get an update later on. So I'll pass on to the slide.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I'm the mother of Eric.
Hi, my name is Brendan Corinne, and I'm a lawyer that is assisted with supporting the families incorporate microchips. So help incorporation into some
Hello, I'm Kate Thorne with York Support Services Network. We're a service agency in York Region, and for this model, we've actually been acting as the broker of funds. And I'll explain that. Yes, anybody?
Hi, my name is Coben. I'm father of Julian. It's one of the family that Gordon and Mariana mentioned earlier. So we'll talk about that model today.
Hi, Carmen. I'm Ray. We are, this is my wife, Madeline, and we are one of the families too that participated in one of the individualized models. We hear a lot more from us today.
My name is Imelda.
Hi, I'm Carol Sweet. We have a son, Jonathan, who just turned 30. This is my husband, Jerome, and I'm looking forward to telling you about our successes with Jonathan.
So just to give you a little brief overview of what we're doing tonight, one thing that I'm going to ask you to do, if you don't mind, is hold your questions till the very end. We have 2 hours and it's a very packed agenda, and I want to make sure that we get to all of the videos and the great information that the families have brought to you today. I want to make sure that you are able to get everything you can out of this. So we should have 15 to 20 minutes at the very end to answer any questions. So these are the areas that we're going to be discussing tonight. We'll be starting with the history, where this all began. How did we get to the point where we had individualized funding models in York Region? Where did this all start? We'll be then moving into sustainability, which is the common elements that are in every single model. We have 4 common elements, and when we built this proposal, we really felt that having those 4 elements meant that these models would be sustainable and around a long time after the families were able to provide this type of support, because it takes a lot of work, and you'll hear in a few minutes how much work that takes. Then we'll be moving right to the models. We have 3 videos of different models, so during those videos you'll get a lot of information regarding, where they started, their whole journey, what were the highlights and achievements that they've lived and seen over the years. and what they would have potentially done differently, because that's a big thing. So we're all here hopefully to learn from everyone's mistakes, and we have made some mistakes. So hopefully we'll learn from those mistakes. And finally, what's next? So provincially, what's next, but also what's next for these families here? What's next for the community? Where does the community want to go? And again, this really comes back to you as families leading that direction. And then we'll have, hopefully, if all goes well, 15 minutes for questions. If you don't have time to answer your questions, please feel free to come and approach us at the very end and ask any one of us any question you have. There's actually some resources in the audience as well that will direct you to. So where did this all begin? This began many years ago. In 2004, there was families approached the ministry and said they weren't happy with what was being provided by agencies and they wanted to change, and thus the birth of the Transformation Agenda. The first program out of the Transformation Agenda was passports. You guys all probably have heard of passports funding. It's the funding where it's allocated to individuals. The individual, as a consumer, then has the right to pick and choose the services and supports that best meets their needs, versus the old way of doing it, which is finding a program, waiting on a wait list, and being allocated a program. So passports was the first program that provided people with choice, and it was based on their interest. It provides them the freedom to move across the province wherever they might want to go, and it is consumer-based. So we all know that as a consumer, we have the ability to change the market, and that was the idea behind passports. Following passports, there was a small initiative in 2014, 2015, and it was a person-directed planning initiative, where families who were on the DSO waitlist and waiting for person-directed planning may have been allocated some funding. I think there were 52 families in York and Simcoe allocated funding, and they were then allocated the funding directly to themselves, much like passports, to find a planner in the community, approach them, and develop a person-directed plan. So through this process, many families had the opportunity to develop person-directed plans. For the first time in the province of Ontario, they were funded by the ministry, and they were able to then decide and complete plans and decide if they wanted to continue implementing those plans and continue on with what we call facilitation. You guys have heard, I'm sure, about facilitation. Facilitation is the process of an individual and third party supporting you in the implementation of your goals, plans, and dreams based on your visions. So facilitation was a process that many of the families chose to engage in after the planning was complete. I was lucky enough to plan with quite a few families in York Region and Toronto and Simcoe, and upon completion of this project, I started hearing from families the same thing. It was a huge murmur. We want more. Families wanted to learn more, they were dedicated to planning, they wanted to go further, but they didn't know how to do it, and nor did I know how to do it. So I had to go back to, and I went back to the Developmental Services Partners, and that was the birth of Why Wait. Why Wait is me going to agencies, because families were pushing me that way, and asking agencies for support. Support to develop events and evenings twice a year, to start planning with families, for families, supporting families in learning about what was out there. Some of the things that they learned about over the last 3 to 4 years was different creative housing models. They learned from Brendan Horn presented microboards. We had house share models presented from Burlington, where we talked about how in Burlington there's individuals who own homes who are aging, and to age in place they have people move in with them. So we had a lot of learning, a lot of discussions, a lot of networking, and families really became more and more engaged. In 2016, there was a call for proposals from the Ministry of Community and Social Services for something new and different. It was called the Creative Housing Individualized Funding Proposal. I'm going to get you guys to run the shot spot. And the Individualized Housing Proposal, call for proposal, was an arm's length committee, the Housing Task Force, that was then in charge of determining who was going to be getting the funding. And I approached many families that I had been working with who were very passionate, who had facilitators involved, either myself or other people who were engaged and committed to the Why Wait events, who wanted to learn and were ready, and showing that they were ready to move forward. So I approached 8 families, and I approached agencies. One of them was Europe Support Services, and the other one isn't here this evening, Montage Support Services. And we developed a great proposal that ended up getting funded. So that's why we're here today. Hopefully the moral of the story is start planning. Really don't wait on a wait list. The Why Wait name comes from that concept. Waiting on a wait list means that you're out of control. Planning allows you and your son or daughter to have some say in what their future will look like. So hopefully that's inspirational. So let's see if this works now. Yes. So let's talk about what was in that proposal and what were the core concepts within the proposal. There were 4 core elements, again, that we felt were huge and needed in order for it to be sustainable. One of them was a person-directed planner and facilitator, an independent facilitator. We actually had a separate budget line within the proposal for each family to hire and maintain a facilitator that they get to choose who they'd like to facilitate for them. And it would continue to support them in their networks of support and friendship. And these groups of people, the networks of support and friendship, are basically people who have a person's back, right? So the best way I could explain it is, if I were making a big decision, I have a core group of 5 or 6 people that I go to ask questions to, and who I know will give me really good advice. So people who, we felt that if the person had a person-directed planner, and that planner could help them develop, if it wasn't yet developed, all of our 8 families already had their network of support and friendship developed, but that facilitator can maintain the network of support and friendship, and help it grow, and help foster relationships, and help the individual make new relationships in their community, increase the number of people in their support circle, etc. So that's the first main component. The second main component, I'm going to pass the mic over to Brendan to talk about whiteboards.
Thank you, Kelly. So I think my role here tonight is to provide you with a brief overview of what microboards are. I'm not going to get into too many of the nuts and bolts, just given our timing constraints, and because there are a lot of people who've been involved in the microboard movement who know a whole lot more than I do, and have been doing this for a long time. But generally speaking, a microboard, or some of you may have heard them referred to as, or similar corporations referred to as ROHAs, or self-directed support organizations. These are small not-for-profit corporations that are formed with the primary purpose of providing support to one individual. So within the context of this project, each individual, each family involved in HTF incorporated a microboard. So family members came together with the person supported, in some cases some trusted friends and other people in the community who had a strong relationship or a strong connection with the individual to form this microboard. So essentially what we did was incorporate a not-for-profit corporation, which I'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. Composed or comprised of a board of directors, family members and trusted friends that had a personal relationship with this one person, who were committed to providing ongoing sort of oversight and support in relation to, primarily in relation to, I think, the housing model that had been developed. But they signed on to provide support in other areas as well, such as supporting the person with making decisions related to their health care, or their finances, or their ODSP supports, or their RDSP investments. So the idea here is that the board committed to sort of carving out some time, either once a month or once a quarter, to get together and oversee sort of all aspects of the individual's life. Like I said, there are a few different variations of these corporations. The microboard movement was really born out west, and an organization, a wonderful organization by the name of Vela, that's based out in BC, really does champion these the whole microboard initiative, and I'd encourage you to have a look at their website, vela.org. In Ontario, we've also had, as I mentioned, similar movements that started, I believe, about 20 years ago. Corporations called ROHAs, and then there are other families or other people that just have come to us over the years that have said, we want to incorporate, and the reason for incorporating sometimes varies, but we want a corporation, we want to bring people together, we want to formalize this support network or sort of support that has been in place to provide support to a person over the course of their life. They want to formalize that in order to ensure that the people involved are committed, and in order to build in what I think is one of the primary reasons we incorporated microboard, we wanted to build in some succession planning and some sustainability in the individual's life. So that's at a very high level what microboards are. Why would you incorporate it? You'd incorporate, as I said, to kind of formalize the network, to build on that, build in some commitment. Often people will incorporate or start thinking about incorporating, not that this is necessarily a precursor, but when there are some individualized funding dollars at play. So if we look at the models here tonight, as I said, each family's got a microboard in place. And I think Kim may talk a little bit more to this, but let's say the funds originate from the ministry, they flow to the broker, which is YSSN in this case, and then from YSSN to the microboard. So the microboard is, instead of funds, many people who are exposed to or have passport funding in place, often money's flowing from broker to, let's say, parent or sibling, and it's the parent or the sibling that's administering the funding, which, depending on the level of funding, may be fine for a certain period of time, but obviously we're not all going to be around forever, and so the idea here is that when we're dealing with individualized funds, especially when we're talking about funds that are, most of the dollars flowing in these models are higher than what people would typically receive through a passport allocation. So we want to make sure that there are inherent checks and balances built in, that there's accountability built in, that there's transparency built in, and that the administration of those funds outlive parents and outlive family members. Hence the idea of bringing people together to sort of share that responsibility of providing support to the individuals. So succession planning and sustainability, I think, is huge. The other piece here is that with most of these models, funds are being used, or a portion of the funds are being used to pay workers. So either employing employees or contracting with independent contractors. Most of you, I assume, being parents, are aware of all of the challenges that come along with employing people or contracting with workers, and so, and the added liability, that exposure to liability, exposure to risk that comes along with that. So establishing a microboard helps to mitigate a bit of that risk. It forces the corporations to take protective measures and safeguards, such as implementing the right kind of insurance coverages, putting those sorts of things in place, whether it be WSIB coverage for workers, or directors and officers coverage for the board, or just general liability coverage, making sure that workers are insured, by independent contractors, making sure that they've got the right kind of coverages in place. If there's a vehicle in use, making sure that the proper coverage is in place for vehicles. And so we've seen microboards really promote and encourage the implementation of these safeguards. Kelly also wanted me to talk a little bit about some of the considerations, or some of the cons, or some of the, I wouldn't call them surprises, but maybe added challenges that came up as we were working through starting up these corporations. A big one was cost. So I think initially we had maybe, or the boards had sort of under budgeted what was going to be required in terms of annual or ongoing maintenance and compliance costs. I'd say specifically related, don't always have to blame the lawyers, but some legal costs, some accounting costs, insurance costs that are associated as well. From a legal standpoint, I can say that, you know, there are quite a few legal considerations that have to be thought through. There's corporate law involved, there's not-for-profit governance law involved, there is tax law, employment law. Depending on what your model looks like, we get into landlord and tenancy issues or considerations, municipal law often. So there are all of these different aspects that need to be addressed and considered depending on what your model looks like. And so, you know, having a line item in your budget for ongoing legal is important. Also, depending on how much money is flowing to the microboard, that will sort of influence your financial reporting requirements and your audit requirements to Corporations Canada or to the Ministry of to the provincial ministry, depending on if you incorporate provincially or federally. And so you've got to build in costs for review engagements or for audits as well. What we've really tried to do within this project is figure out ways, develop relationships with lawyers and accountants and bookkeepers and payroll companies that we could, you know, we could go to these, we can access professional services, knowing that there are 8 families or 10 families or, you know, how many, knowing that there's a group of families who are interested in procuring services, that has helped bring down the costs in some of these areas. The other sort of consideration that is very prominent is identifying people to serve on the microboard. And I think this starts this starts very early in life for all sorts of reasons, and sort of in the sense of, you know, identifying trustees for your estates and your wills, and identifying people to act on a personal support network. But when it comes to identifying directors for a microboard, it's a different level of responsibility, because these people now have fiduciary obligations to a corporation. And so it can often be a bit of a harder sell depending on whether or not people want to take on that exposure to risk and whether or not they have the time to actually commit to the microboard. And I'm sure maybe some of the families here tonight can speak to that. I think I'm out of time, but I'm ready for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you covered a little bit, you know, finding the right people for a microboard really comes out of networks of support that were developed ahead of time. So the reason why, again, many of these families became involved in this project was they were ready, and they already had a consistent and strong and secure network of support and friendship. And that made finding members for the microboards a little bit easier. It didn't make it totally carefree, but it was easier than it would have been had we started from scratch. Those networks of support for some of the families were in place for at least a year, like since 2015, maybe a year and a half, before we put this proposal forward. I'm going to pass this off to Kim, who's going to talk about the brokerage, which is the last component.
As we mentioned, there is individualized funding in the system, but the Ministry of Community Social Services requires that funding to flow through an agency. Currently, they don't fund families directly, so agencies such as ours look to partner with families so that we can flow the money based on the model and the proposal that was submitted. So acting as a broker essentially means that when the proposal was approved by the Ministry, there were components outlined in it in terms of what the money would be used for. And so our responsibility was to essentially put a budget line aside for each person and create an agreement, and we would then pay the expenses submitted to us as required based on what was approved. And certainly we learned a few things along the way about that process. One of the things that we also did is because the ministry requires there to be standards associated with services. And in the legislation, so our legislation is called the Social Inclusion Act, there are quality assurance measures. And the ministry requires any agency who receives funding to ensure that the services meet that standard. Now, a residential setting, like a group home, has about 300 standards they need to meet. And we identified the fact that that was likely quite unreasonable for families to put into their own home. This is an individual's home, and we were not going in and checking fridges for expiry dates on food. But we did feel that there was a requirement to look at basic health and safety of the physical environment. Are people, do people know when the smoke detector goes off what that means? Do people know that they should evacuate when they hear this smoke detector go off? Our fire codes practice. And then we looked at, the requirements for the staffing, because we want to make sure that the people providing the service at a certain standard. So we required things like first aid and CPR. We wanted to make sure that people had training on different support protocols. So we essentially distilled 300 standards down to 11. And we did that to ensure that people had some measure of accountability, because it also supported the microboard that a third party was coming in to do a bit of an overview of the current model. And the microboard that had some assurance that what was being provided and being paid for was matching a certain standard. Additionally, we actually assigned a case manager to every single model because we recognize that life is fluid. And so you may put a model in place and dream it on paper, but when you go to put it into fruition, you may actually need someone to help you in terms of navigating other services in the system. So we did assign a case manager as part of the model, and that case manager is the same case manager for everyone, because we thought that there might be some learnings that would be important to share across each and every model and each person. So Avenue has actually been the case manager involved, and has really been an essential support to the families as well as to the agency. She kind of acts as the liaison. And so if I have a question about, what's this expense about, Avenue can tell me, and then we can work through whether or not that is something that falls into the proposal.
So I want to let another family introduce themselves very quickly while we get ready for the videos. We're going to be moving into the family videos and family updates, letting you know how the models went, what they looked like, what were the successes, etc.
I'm Scott Fraser.
And Michelle Fraser. Our 26-year-old daughter has her own model where she's living independently from us in a self-contained apartment in our house at the home.
So just very briefly, this is a very brief model overview. We're calling them models, but they're people's homes, and Jason keeps reminding me of that. It's people's homes, but we're calling them models because each one has a different component that we thought would be interesting for families to learn about. So for example, the technology model really utilizes technology to support the person in place or on top of staffing. So it has extra safeguards for individuals who rely on and would prefer to have technology support them at times rather than a staff person. Some people prefer that versus somebody telling them what to do. Maybe Alexa could prompt them in terms of what to do. So we'll talk about the technology model. We'll talk about the shared ownership model with live-in exchange for overnight support. That was a model that was originally developed but has changed. And so we'll talk about the changes to those models. These were all the original models. We had the shared rental model with overnight technology support. We had a live-in model, which still exists today, so there's two families who talk about the live-in model. And we had the retrofit family home and eventual housemate model. Unfortunately, that family couldn't make it today, but maybe either myself, or Kim, or Avni can give a brief update in terms of what that model is like. So the key learning when we developed these models, because we tried to group individuals together. And the big key learning for me as a planner, and I've since gone back to Linda Perry with Bella, the guru of individualized planning, and she told me the same thing, is that it's wonderful to plan for efficiencies, for families to share efficiencies, but having families compromise when it comes to their loved ones does not work. So we started off with these great models, and what we learned is, thank goodness we had all the funding individualized, and we had some foresight that all these individuals did not necessarily want to live together. When they finally got to the point of moving in together, they didn't want to live together. So, with the flexibility of individualized funding comes the ability to change your model, and that's something that you'll kind of see with individualized funding in general. The wonderful thing about this is that the models, most of these models, are where they are today, but because they're person-directed and organic, and because a person's needs may change in life, they will be somewhere different in 5 years, trust me. But they have the ability to make the changes because they have the right funding to support them through the changes, and they have a team of agencies, case management, etc. involved in supporting them with finding the resources, etc. So the key learning, sharing, and compromise is really difficult. And the win is everybody had individualized money. So if you do it that way, what we've learned was that's the best kind of way to do it. Make the money individualized versus grouping people together and having them share the money. Splitting money up at the end of the day is difficult to do. So the first video is the Live-In Model video. Jonathan L's family is here today. Do you want to introduce Jonathan actually a little bit? Maybe you can pass the mic down. Introduce the video for us.
Okay. Video on Jonathan. Jonathan is our son. He's 30 years old. Shortly after, 32, sorry. Shortly after birth. The other Jonathan is 30, that's right. Shortly after birth, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, severe spastic quadriplegia. So Jonathan today, he's unable to walk, talk, or communicate the way we do. And so keep that in mind as you look at the video, because that's a little bit of the background of Jonathan.
So hi, I'm Kelly. I'm an independent planner and facilitator, and we're here today to visit one of the 3 models that was developed through individualized residential funding through the Housing Task Force. We're here to meet Jonathan and his family today. Jonathan lives in the downstairs basement portion of the home. The family has separated in 2, and they have 2 live-in caregivers residing with Jonathan to support him. Hi, Imelda. Nice to see you. Let's talk a little bit about Jonathan's model. What have you created for Jonathan?
Well, Jonathan's model is an individualized one as part of the York Region project, which is more a demonstrative, collaborative project. And what we've done is, it's innovative in the sense that it's individualized. It allows Jonathan to have his own space, which is his personal apartment within our residence, with a separate entrance coming in, and having to be independent on his own, in keeping with around-the-clock caregiver support.
Jonathan is looked after really well because he has the staff complement to provide him the 24-hour care that he needs. He also is happy and quite content with the arrangement that we had provided him.
Yeah. And one of the key benefits I see is that gradually it's allowing Jonathan to be more independent and less reliant on his parents. And so it wouldn't be traumatic when the day comes when we're no longer able to provide support for him. So to me, that's one of the big things about it. And also he has become adapted to the routine very nicely, because it's very gradual.
Most importantly, we're fortunate to be able to establish a microboard, and it's a very good support for Jonathan. And we are the members, the directors of the microboard are our own family. Our 2 girls and their spouses, and Jonathan and Ray and I.
Yes, well, the microboard, the key benefit is succession planning. The directors on the microboard get familiar with Jonathan's daily routine. They also get familiar with how everything works, because they ultimately would have oversight to ensure that he receives the care that he needs when we are no longer able to. So that's really the key, and we've established a couple of things to make it work really well. One of them is that the board itself, each person is able to go on a Google Drive and see all the details that are required for Jonathan's full care. And it would have videotapes of how he's fed, how his exercises are performed, how you make his meals, what are the safety precautions you take, the entire plethora of everything that has to do with making him have a comfortable and better life. I usually say to people in general that accomplishing anything of significance takes time and patience. It's also hard work and commitment. But so you have to start slowly and do a little at a time. If you look at it from the big picture, you may give up. So you want to start with, it could be one recipe, it could be one procedure, everything in small doses, and you'd be amazed usually what you can accomplish in a given time when you look back on it. We were fortunate that in our jobs and in growing up, we developed good discipline and attention to details. So we are always attentive to Jonathan's needs, and we are good at making notes, taking note of little things, because usually for success it's not necessarily knowing what there is to do, but it's all the little details that play a big part in helping you get to a goal. So we started very slowly, and we are very fortunate to also have Kelly, who helps her. She's been tremendous to us. We would definitely not have moved ahead as quickly as we have had it not been for her. So it helps to have a good person planning and facilitating the project as well. Right?
Jonathan is very routine. He's very structured, and we try to follow through on what we have started. And when we started this Y-Wait program, or this pilot study, we started thinking of how we can maximize the funding that's being provided to us, and how can we improve Jonathan's quality of life using these funds. And so we started looking at activities and where he can go during the summer, where we can take him any other time of the year, who will be good support for Jonathan, who are his friends, who can we invite, you know, on special occasions or even any time during the year, who's available. What type of activities would benefit him. Equipment, you know, we researched on equipment that he needs, anything to make his place comfortable as well.
And we do things gradual. We tested it by staying out one night to see how we would manage what we need to take and what we forgot to take, and so on. And then the second trip, this was all in 2017, we spent 2 nights. So one of the keys, I think, to being successful is you have to take time and do things gradually. And most people want to get there in a hurry. Well, our model, as it is today, is a little different to the original. Originally, we were going to co-share either a home or have 2 apartments joined together with another family. We decided on having Jonathan have a less traumatic move, because that's quite traumatic. He'd be away totally from the family. And instead what we did was we made renovations so that he can have his own access to the basement apartment as his own for himself and round-the-clock caregivers. We're looking ahead in the future and recognize that it would be nice if Jonathan had his own little home on the ground level so that we don't have to have lifts. Because one of the issues we had recently is the lift breaking down and having to physically lift him out of the wheelchair from the lift and waiting for service to come. So in the next 5 years or so, what we're hoping is to do an extension to this home, separate for Jonathan, so that he has his own little, say, 1-bedroom home pad with the basement renovated for his own caregivers, so that he is pretty much as independent on his own as we can do. That would be as least traumatic as it is, and a nice step in the forward direction. But that's how it is with planning. You take it one step at a time and move ahead. Okay, I would make it 2 little pieces of information. One is always try to practice maintaining a positive outlook. The first thing we tend to do when we're confronted with stress is we think negative. But we should be thinking, well, okay, what is it that there's always something good in every situation, and focus on that. The other thing to remember, which I've mentioned earlier, is anything that you want to achieve of any significance takes time. It takes hard work too, and it takes commitment. You really have to work at it, but you have to work at it in a positive way, with a positive outlook, and don't think negative. Just think, yes, there's a way. We just have to find that way.
I think, just like anything else, you have to live within your means. Don't force yourself to look out there for bigger things. Just do what you can do right at the moment.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add to what Imelda said regarding you're in a box and what are you going to do is that here's your situation, and you feel that you're at wit's end, as it is, but you still need to think ahead, and 5-10 years from now, what will it be like? Because if you're not thinking ahead as well and planning ahead, you tend to make decisions that are quick fix.
Yeah, Jonathan usually will be vocal, like he in his own way. And soon as when we're talking as a family, and we mentioned about, oh, you're going to be with a partner, and you're going to be in a nice condo, we're going to get you a nice condo, and he probably knows that it's far away. It's not next door. And you should see that he did not kind of talk or be vocalized like what he's doing now, and he was just very quiet, that we didn't know what's wrong. I thought he's in pain or he has the flu, but so it went on for about a week or so, and then of course the conversation died down, and we were planning, and it took about a few months before we realized that we probably won't do it. Actually, we were already looking for condos. We found one that probably would be suitable, and so we were excited, but he wasn't. So when Kelly came for us to meet here, and Jonathan, I think, was with us upstairs, Kelly said, why don't you just get Jonathan to stay here with you and have the basement, be his pad. And his, Ray and I both lighted up and said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so we started planning renovations and stuff. And Jonathan also is always with us, and he hears what we are talking about. And from then on, his face would light up, and he would just be bright and back to normal.
So that was the first day. We're going to have, can we pass down the mic to the seats? All the way to the table. The seats were the second half of that original model, and so I want them to kind of walk you through what
We wanted to have a long-term residential and caregiving support for our son through the purchase of property for him, where there would be 2 dwellings, one for Jonathan and his caregiver, and one for my husband and ourselves. But our present house didn't accommodate that, so we sold our house and purchased a property that could accommodate that. And it was through Kelly that started all of this through the Y-Way project when it came to. I was very inspired by the speaking by the families myself. I was inspired by the Y-Way project meetings when I came to them. And Kelly continues to help us through all the process, and it's been just amazing. As Brendan Ford mentioned, we set up a microboard for our son called Friends of Jonathan. And it consists of our cousins and their spouses, our older son, and 2 very good friends who have a relationship with Jonathan. And so they take an interest in him and in his life. So we're very encouraged by all of that. And the microboard is really crucial for helping us over his lifetime make financial decisions, residential decisions, caregiving decisions, and caregiving expenses going through the microboard. So we're really good hands with Brendan. So I just encourage everybody to take a leap of faith and go through it, because there's tremendous support here from Kim Thorne and Avenue Parchment and through YSSM.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Carol was saying, our property that we were living in wasn't really appropriate for the Lynn's model. That is having like a separate space within our home where John his independence with support. Also, we were in a suburban area where it wasn't easy walking distance to town amenities like restaurants, parks, or community centers. So this is one of the reasons why we decided to sell our place and buy a property which was close to a lot of amenities. John really enjoys going to restaurants and going to the community centers, swimming. And so we did that. It was a huge process to go through. We found a property that had a main house where Jonathan's now living with his living caregiver. And this had also a large garage workshop at the back of the property. It was quite a deep property. And we managed to convince the town to allow us to renovate that into a separate residence for Carol and myself. Because normally you're not allowed to have 2 houses on one property. However, the thing that people should keep in mind is that the province of Ontario now, because of a lack of rental space, and as people are getting older, the province itself is having more responsibilities for seniors, costs are rising. They're now giving instructions to individual municipalities to allow these type of coach houses, if you will, granny suites, to bring families closer together, help relieve some of the rental crush. So it is possible to where a model like that wasn't really feasible in the past. It has become more feasible now. The other aspect of our model is with the great support we've been getting from the government through YSSN and all of Kelly's support and cavities. One of the overriding objectives we had is that this model be sustainable over the long run financially, because as we all know, with the new Ontario Labour Code having greatly increased the cost of caregiving, increasing the amount of holidays and other expenses involved, costs are going up over time. So our thought was that the residence that is now being built for us, hopefully will be ready by the middle of July. We're kind of looking at a suitcase as we sold us. We're thinking that once we live on, once we pass away, that the microboard will be able to rent this accommodation to others, and that the rent that's received, the microboard can use to help finance Jonathan's caregiving costs as they go up. And as Jonathan's own needs go up as he moves up into the senior ages, there'll be an asset that could potentially be sold by the microboard to finance Jonathan moving into a place where he can receive the type of care that he'll need as he gets older. So that was our main objective. There was a section in here that we wanted just to outline what was working well. And what's working really well is that Jonathan's living caregiver came and lived with us for 3 months before they moved into Jonathan's residence. Carol and I kind of explained, residence and all that stuff. It went very smoothly. Jonathan moved into his residence and now does it, views it as being his house. And when Carol and I take him out on the weekends, he's always very eager to know when he's going back to his house. This is a place that he identifies as my place, which is very, very encouraging to Carol and I. And we've noticed really big changes in his communication skills. When Jonathan calls us up on the phone to talk to us, he doesn't go through echoalia or old tapes and whatnot. He's actually participating in much more logical type of conversations. And this is something we're really, really grateful for. And he's even now taking music lessons, where in the past when he lived with us, we tried to give him piano lessons. He's very musically oriented. He just couldn't do it because it was too academically oriented. He has an antenna to recognize cognitive activities that he puts on the block. But with the help of his living caregiver and a really, really great piano teacher, he's now enjoying very much his piano lessons. So we're seeing real growth with children.
He's also volunteering at a mission store. He's now involved in a social group, which he had never done before. So we're just like really, really thrilled with what's happening. He's being involved in the community and feeling grown up and feeling age appropriate. So we're grateful, very grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, I told you the story about when we had our meeting at Jonathan's house, and he saw you guys come in, and then at one point he wanted us all to leave. It was his house, right? So he really does feel like this is his home, and he'll have people when he wants people, and when he's done, he asks people to leave. So he's really good. So we have the technology model, and what I'm going to do is I'll start with Stephanie's video. Stephanie is one of the 3 people that live in an apartment setting, and they use technology to support them at times. I'll let the families talk about it after the video a little bit. So we're here at Stephanie's house. Stephanie lives with 2 other individuals, and they have something called the technology model. Basically what that means is they're using technology to provide some of the support, especially overnight support. They do not have overnight staff. Instead, what they have is super high-tech technology to keep an eye on what's going on. Hi, Stephanie. Can we come in? It's Kelly, and I'm here with Jason.
Okay, come on in. Actually, this is a great model and a good opportunity to expose Stephanie to be more independent. This model relates to like 3 different individuals with different capacity living together in a rented property. And for continuity, the model thought about the fact that we need somebody to be the facilitator. So each family or each individual who lives in the house hire their own facilitator. And we also incorporate a company called Microbot, which will solely look after Stephanie's daily activities.
What relationships do you have on your microboard? Are they family members, friends, like?
Initially, like the microbot, when we set it up, like it's kind of difficult to get people to become directors. We got the parents on the microbot, and then my brother and sister-in-laws in the microbot, and then her swim instructor is in the microbot, because she knows Stephanie when she was maybe less than 10 years old, like or 5, or because she started swimming lesson when she was quite young. So and plus, like Stephanie is also the director of in the microbot. But gradually, I'm going to pull Stephanie in, because I want Stephanie to be able to help me with the admin area in the microboard, and also I have involved Stephanie to look after Stephanie's health issues, because Stephanie had quite a bit of health issues as well. So I wanted somebody other than family to know her more, and Stephanie is so helpful. She is the best person I've met, to be able to take on this kind of responsibility. Actually, to lessen the support dollars, we are thinking of installing cameras in the public area, like the kitchen, the living room, and the dining area. And the cameras were installed here and also on the other side. And for the entrance, we also had cameras watching over the front entrance as well. And to look after them, to make sure that they are safe in their bedrooms, we also have cameras in the bedroom. But that give us the opportunity not to pay somebody to live in the house overnight, because we had at least some thing to safeguard them as long as they stay in the house. Actually, the three individuals, they are not with the same capability. Like, their levels of support is quite different from one another. But we managed to hire somebody in the evening and do the evening time from maybe 3:30 to 9:30 with one support worker. So that kind of saves us money. And then in the morning, and then maybe in the weekends, we hire our own separate support based on their needs. We also can save some support dollars by getting involved with CCAC. Two individuals living in the house has support from CCAC, each one of them for 1 hour to help them with their personal care. So that is also another savings. I think the setup of the house is perfect for the three individuals, because it has, each one of them had full bath facilities. They don't have to share any bathroom. And I think for Stephanie, I can't say too much about the other ones, but I think one best thing that happens from the model is that Stephanie is comfortable living away from home. I think that is the most important objective or goal that I'm after. She moved in this house since January of 2017. So she's been here for over 1 year. And then initially, for the first couple of For the first couple of months, I used to live with her. I stay in the house with her to get to know the support workers as well, and let them know what kind of support she requires. Yeah, so it takes me 2 months, and then gradually I stay with her less and less. Now, I stay with her only one night on Mondays. Yeah, I think it creates an opportunity for other people to consider, because originally my thinking was that if Stephanie is going to live with somebody else, they should be more or less the same capability, but it has proven me wrong, because people with different capacities can live harmoniously together, and I think it brings variety to their to their social life or social skills. Because and also there is one more important thing is that I used to think that like Stephanie should live with girls, females, but this is a bold step that I took, that Stephanie is living with 2 guys. I think they know one another for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
But they have never lived together, and with their capability, they don't talk to one another too much, but they know one another's existence. Because when Stephanie lives at home, it's very difficult for me to wake her up in the morning, because like I ask her to get up and then she didn't get up right away. But when she moved here, to be supported by other individuals, like she is very cooperative. So that is something I can see very clearly. And plus, like at home, like she's so used to me helping her along, and she doesn't do much. But here, at least, like she helped put, set the table, like put the dirty dishes in the sink, and help out in any way she can. So I think that is the very obvious improvement that I can see.
What I have observed in the house, I think, is incredible, because just the connection that the 3 of them have, and how it's deepened and developed over this period of time. If we had the opportunity to, you know, bring them together before they even moved in, and it's just amazing to see how they interact, and they're so helpful. Like, you know, one of the individuals that is here is always helping Stephanie.
Yeah.
And they just have developed that really nice, you know, relationship. And Stephanie has had the opportunity to meet new support workers. So she has new support workers that come in. And she actually stays now on Friday night. Is that correct, Alice?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one thing that developed, because, you know, she was increasing her time here, and now she actually stays here on the Friday night, wakes up on the Saturday, and then support comes in, and she's going out into the community and doing things. And, you know, she's taking yoga, and she's, you know, connecting with the community in this area, which is new for her. This is a new area for her, because before she lived
North York.
North York, yeah.
Initially, it's very difficult for the 3 individuals to rent a property, because I think in the public, like they are not, they don't have too much information about how these people behave. And then it took us over 2 months to get somebody who's willing to rent a place for us. And then like buying a property with 3 individuals will become very difficult, because it may because initially we don't know whether it will work or not. And for us to come up with the down payment, it would be difficult with the price of real estate these days. The one thing that we are doing is that we wanted to see if we can find a more reliable investor, or somebody who can rent us a place more permanently in a long term, so that like we don't have to look for houses periodically. I don't know like when like they will say, oh, I'm going to sell the house, and then we'll have to look for another property. I actually live in North York, and for the other 2 individuals, they live in, one in Markham and one in Richmond Hill, which is rather close. But for me, I live in Toronto, pretty south, and then for her to move up here, it's a bit of a thing for me because I have more work to do. Her programs, the ODSP, the passport funding, like everybody has to change. Like she has to move her file to a different region.
I think in the beginning, even though these guys had a history and they knew each other, you know, moving into a home together is a completely different situation. So everybody was starting to get to know each other, and there was 3 independent facilitators, and we were working together as well. And then we each were, you know, advocating and trying to, you know, make things work in the home best for that person. So we met with the families, we met individually with the 3 people that live here, and you know, we were trying to figure out schedules and trying to see if we could share resources, and there was all these new things that came up that, you know, we weren't sure how we were going to solve these problems, so it was a lot of work.
I think like our model, basically we stick to our model right from the beginning, and the only thing I can think of in 5 years is that maybe the 3 individuals each had their own goals, and then they have to go their separate way. That is the only thing I can foresee. And then plus like with the rental property, there is always an uncertainty because who knows when they said, oh, you have to look for something else again. So it is not something permanent, but like the idea, the elements of the model, I think like is doing great.
Yeah.
And the microboard, the facilitator, and the setup, and plus I think it's very good initially that we separate the funding into each family, not like tie the funding to the whole group. So I think we can each go our different way. If we choose to. So I think it's very good.
Yeah.
I think with the model for support too really changed as well. I think there was an initial vision, and there was some trial and error around that too, which, you know, of course that's going to happen, but eventually you got to this place where you took a more kind of individualized, you know, you shared some support, but then there's some individualized needs that needed to be addressed as well.
We were in a WhatsApp, so like we talked to one another through those, and we chat about a situation when our support workers are going on vacation. What are we going to do during that time? So we do talk to one another often, but not so as we did it initially, because initially like there are so many things to talk about, like who is going to get what, and then put everything together. But now I think it's more stable now. I think the most important thing that the family needs to understand is that like they have to expose their family member to some independent support and independent residential support also. Because I think a lot of us, like we are so, we don't want to let go of our child who had developmental disability, and if you leave it up to the end, if you procrastinate, they won't be ready. Like it will be very sad for them because they are not used to that. They are so used to mom and everybody that they know. So I think every family who had a member with disability should expose them like to residential arrangement outside of home, and also some support that is outside of family member, because I think they all need it. I think before Stephanie moved in with the two other individuals, Stephanie went to Montage for a respite over the weekends. And I usually hire people to take her to different places in the weekends. And when she stays with another day program, I also got individualized support program for her. She volunteered at a store that provide clothing for people who interview for work.
Okay.
So like I actually let Stephanie go to different programs. She skis, she swims. So I kind of want to expose her to different social groups, so that like come one day I won't be with her, then like she won't be so upset. I think this model is not for everyone if you think like it is not suitable, but I think the crucial thing is to try different patterns or different models, because if you think like this is something that you would like to do, try it out. And I feel very fortunate that I got the funding, because the support, the money like to hire support workers is is a big part of the financial aspect. And I think I'm really very fortunate to get funding.
So that was Stephanie, who's one of the three individuals. So I'm going to have Kim, sorry, pass it to either Marianne or Carmen to speak about the model. They also have children who live with Stephanie. So I just want to maybe 2 to 5 minutes your perspective in terms of what's worked, what we have done differently, and just share what you've learned through this process.
Alice already done the hard part, explaining the setup, the situation that we were in, the challenges that we faced, and maybe I can touch upon it with technology quickly. I think back in 2 years ago, there weren't that many options that we had. We really like have a good monitoring system to rely on videos, make sure they're safe. Maybe just make sure they're home. So we just used the Rogers. Rogers was the only one that's a viable option back then, and even then, it wasn't that really, meet all our needs, because our main thing is the video. We need to make sure that the individuals are safe at home, and make sure that they don't wander around like away from home. That's the main thing. So that's why, like Alice already talked about, like we saw the camera, and Rogers didn't really have a good video system back then. Well, even now it's not that good. So that's why I stepped in, and it's good that I'm an IT guy. So technology is my hobby. So I don't mind, doing some research to install all these cameras that Alice mentioned. And I just want to emphasize that all the cameras are password protected. So only the parent, family member are authorized to see. So even though privacy is an issue, but like we just want to make sure like safety is number one for our individual. So I had to do some of my research to install the camera, and I think back then it would be, because there weren't that many options, so I had to do all that myself, and learn that all, from YouTube, all that kind of thing. So, but now, as technology evolves, so there are more options. I think recently, like one of our families, they were trying to use Nest, which owned by Google. So it seems to be another viable option for a family that are not really that tech savvy. And even though it's a bit pricey, but still, as long as they meet the need to keep the individual safe, it's worth the money. And because not everybody is tech savvy enough to really maintain a good working video streaming system at home. So Nest might be a good option to use. I think I want to emphasize, because technology, if somebody interested, you can talk about it in Q&A session or after the session. The couple of things I want to mention is if other family needs to do what we have gone through, like renting a property for the individual. So maybe, but still, currently, still, you know, because people still have this stigma and kind of worry about, you know, if they rent a place for individual with special needs. So I think back from our experiences, we emphasize to the landlord that because the money is coming from the government, so it's guaranteed their income. So that's the main thing that we need to emphasize to the landlord, because the rental property is like the main thing is to get the money back, right? So the second thing is because we need to emphasize is because this individual, we have all this support worker to look after them. So actually they don't really have parties, you know, they don't really do crazy things. So that's actually better than renting like a place to students, you know. So we just need to emphasize those things, because if you do not mention this, they might not really think it that way. So I think that would be, you know, if somebody needs to rent a place, you know, for the individuals in the future. Because Kelly told me that the government is rolling out this project, you know, going forward.
It's subsidized federal and it's Brian's here. It's a federal subsidies.
Yeah, individualized funding, so there may be more chances for parents to go through what we have gone through. I think that's okay.
I like those tips at the end to help families know how to sell. Sometimes you do have to sell. You know, why should you rent it to me? Do you want it louder? I can't hear anything there. Okay. So this is here.
Again, my name is Mariana, and my son Derek shares the rented property with Julian and Stephanie. Derek's lifestyle is very different than Stephanie and Julian. So he's a very social guy, he's very outgoing, he starts different activities throughout the week. He works part-time, he goes to training, he goes to volunteering, he also goes to recreation activities in the community. So it's a little bit of a challenge finding him all the appropriate support that he needs. But with hard work and, you know, if you keep trying hard enough, all the support were finally in place to support him. So the rental property that we have is like 3 stories above ground. So the top level bedrooms, the second level common area with the kitchen, the living room, and dining room. And then on the lower level, which is still above ground, is a big area that we managed to turn into 1-bedroom apartment for Derek. So Derek has his own apartment in this house. So the beauty of that is that Derek is able to invite friends over to hang out in his own apartment. If you notice there in the video that Alice was in, you heard a lot of chime and thing. That's Derek's friend coming into his house. So he really enjoys his apartment, so he calls it his mom's house. And he's really happy, and the transition is very smooth. But he won that was a lot of work to set up all this from ground zero. And, but in the end, it paid off.
Perfect, thank you, Mariana. So we have one last video to show you, and that's the video for Amanda. Scott, Michelle, do you want to introduce Amanda a little bit first, or talk about it a little bit after? What's your preference? Or just play the video. Perfect. So here we are at Amanda's house. Amanda lives underneath, so downstairs in her self-contained apartment. Her parents live above. So tell us a little bit about Amanda's home.
Well, Amanda's home, she has her own apartment in our home, and she is supported by staff, and she's making all her own choices now and doing her own social things. She's doing what she wants to do when she wants to do it, not relying on us to take her places, because I don't have that energy anymore.
Go ahead.
Amanda's independence has blossomed with this. It's things that we did not think she was capable of, she's doing, and it's like nothing.
For example?
An example of that is she now uses her own iPhone, calls Uber, and she takes Uber by herself. She's nonverbal. She types in her address and the address of where she's going, and she takes herself to day program. She then sends me a text to know she's arrived safely, and it's working great.
Yeah, there's been a couple bumps along the way.
Yeah,
but,
with a stop at McDonald's. That wasn't planned. But that's Amanda.
That was her choice, yeah. She wanted to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
And with Uber, you knew where she was.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's that safeguard built in.
It was something I was very held back to try, and you kind of pushed me. Let's just give it a try, and it's been wonderful.
And is that the benefit, I guess, of having a support network? Because you all have either mic boards or networks of support and friendship. So you have a lot of people kind of discussing each new idea, each new goal that Amanda might have for herself.
Absolutely, that's a huge, huge help with it.
Yeah.
In fact, when we've come up against something like a bump in the road, I'll pick up the phone and call somebody on one of our support team and bounce questions off them.
Get their opinion.
And it's just getting the idea of like 8 people as opposed to only me. And it's not only me holding everything on my shoulders now, which it has been, and now everybody has input. I mean, Amanda holds the ball. It's her decisions. But when we come across things that need a little smoothing out, it's a great support. It makes it all that much more easier. On our support team, we didn't do a microboard yet. We still may in the future. And it will still be that team. We'll just roll into a microboard. So there is 3 of Amanda's aunts. One of her good friends,
neighbor,
us,
yeah.
Amanda herself,
Yeah.
and one of our neighbors who is a bit younger than Amanda but has known Amanda her whole life. And Amanda has a very strong connection with everybody on her microboard, or her support team. Amanda's a huge Leaf fan, and one of the members, they FaceTime each Leaf game. And they're back and forth constant. That's her new Leaf buddy. Yeah, and she knows these are people that she can FaceTime at any time. And she does. A lot of times she'll have a new staff, and maybe she's not 100% comfortable. She'll FaceTime somebody on her team or us. Just let us know where she is, what's going on, and it's great. Yeah.
It has been trial and error.
It absolutely has.
Yeah, it hasn't gone 100% smooth.
Yeah,
just trying things out and different people.
Right. Would you say more informal and different people versus the formal? Like sometimes the formal is just...
Informal tends to work better for us. And we're not extremely rigid. Like we'll get together, what we do now is we're getting together about every 4 months, not too often. And we start out with Amanda and me and Scott just talking about any changes that have happened since we all last got together. And then if there's anything coming up that we need to discuss, if there's financial issues, anything, any issues that aren't working, and we just brainstorm, and yeah, that's about it. And it works, it's working. Our whole vision, she pretty much had to be within a 1 kilometer radius of us. Not because I wanted her that close, but she is so strongly connected here.
Everybody knows her.
Everybody does.
Everybody knows her in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
So built-in safety in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People would call you if there was something that they were worried about.
Yeah, and that has happened. I've had the neighbor call, did you know Amanda's in her wheelchair going down? Yeah, I know, thanks, okay. Perfect, just making sure.
Yeah.
I think her transiting to and back from her day program alone are huge accomplishments.
Yeah.
We were, and we did have to, this is where the bumps and hiccups come in, but for a while there, we were going to work. Amanda would still be sleeping. She would wake up at 10 o'clock, get herself ready, and then call
Use a
Uber.
checklist?
Yep, she has a checklist of what has to be done.
Everything she has to do.
And then she would call Uber, text me, I'm on my way, and then text me when she arrived. And that was working pretty well for a while. And then one day, it didn't work so well, and she thought she needed to go to emergency instead of destinations. So I got the text, I'm in emergency. What? Luckily I work at the hospital and I could get there very quickly, and she was totally fine. She just really likes emergency.
She really likes the hospital. Part of us is really proud that she was able to do that, even though it wasn't what was the plan.
Yeah.
Another one was when she took her wheelchair down to the hospital, hopped on the bus, and went up. This was another McDonald's run, and then drove her wheelchair from McDonald's all the way to her day program along Harry Walker Parkway.
But she knew exactly what bus to take,
Yeah.
where to get off. Like,
and part of us is scared.
Yeah.
And
Big
part of us
it.
is proud.
Yeah. Huge change. Amanda she's always been a social butterfly, but now she's a social queen. She's the queen bee. So every Friday night, this apartment is full of her friends, and they play bingo, or they watch a Jays game.
Have snacks.
Yes. Last weekend, they each brought a different food item. They sat around eating and socializing. We don't have to be here. Like, we're out doing our own thing as this goes on. We don't even know who's coming sometimes. Like, yeah.
It's amazing.
We've really, this is away from Amanda, but we've kind of gotten a huge part of our life back with this.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fact that she lives under our roof still helps with the anxiety and
definitely does.
And the worry.
She's able to check in with us every day.
You can tell.
Yeah,
you know.
It helps her huge. Yeah. Like, she'll go out. Tonight I think they're going to a movie, I'm not sure. And then when they come home, when she comes home with her worker.
She's got her own entrance.
She does, but she'll probably come in our door. Hi. And then she'll go let her worker in and then come downstairs. So it still gives her that, oh, mom and dad are right here. Okay.
She does love to go out for dinner, though.
Yes. A little too much.
A little too much.
This is where the support team comes in again. It became an issue. She would only eat out. She would not want to cook anything. So,
should I show the thing?
Yeah, go get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the members came up with this idea. At first we were like, well, let's give her a budget. And she said, well, what about if we make a dinner plate, a fork, and 1, 2, and 3. She can go out 3 times a week. So when she goes out once. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's been working. With us, when we put in our original proposal, we went in, like, our model has changed huge from what we came up with, what we started with. We put in with another gentleman, and they would share accommodation and share staff. So we realized pretty quick it wasn't really going to work. So we were able to, because it's individualized funding, split and go on our own and take Amanda's portion and set her up this way. But we didn't have now funding for full staff because we were going in with shared staffing. So because she's here, we're like a natural overnight support. So that's covered.
Staff.
Amanda does go to a day program Monday to Friday. So she's almost 100% getting herself ready in the morning. So I help her out a little bit, but I'm sure with the next time we talk, she'll be doing it all.
Such a big difference, right?
Huge difference than what it was.
Morning.
Yeah.
So now you can go to work most of the time.
Yeah.
And she gets herself up and ready.
That's right.
So it's evening support only that you're looking at.
Evening and weekend, and that's
I think it's easier too because she's kind of a night owl. So for her to be able to sleep in a bit, I think it's easier for her to get going too than like you know, it's 8 o'clock.
Trying to get her before I leave.
We gotta go.
So allowing her to make her own choices in her schedules kind of helped alleviate that big struggle. It was an unnecessary struggle, really. Well, it's necessary because you have to get to work.
Right.
But she gained enough skills to be able to do it.
That's right.
Right. Where do you see it going? Where do you see the vision being even in the next 5 years? Have you guys kind of started thinking about that next step? And if there is a next step?
We'd like her to move out of the house and stay in the neighborhood, nice and close, and the same kind of idea of what we're doing now, only just not under our roof.
And a possible roommate.
Roommate.
And they would just have a natural support between each other overnight.
We've maybe even considered her and her brother sharing an apartment. I don't know.
I don't think that would work.
Just depends how big it is. We have thought of that as a possible alternative.
Ideas, right?
For sure. We've also talked about like way down the road when we retire, who knows, possibly the house is for both kids and Amanda moves upstairs. There's another extra rooms there. She could have staff that stays. Her brother could live down here.
And you guys could retire.
And we go to the beach. We go to Costa Rica.
So recognizing that this took a lot of work to do,
yeah,
even with the funding, it takes a lot of work. What would make this easier for you as families? So, you know, we hear often that, you know, you have the funding, everything should be easy. It's not as easy as it seems. Money doesn't solve everything.
No.
What would make it even easier? What else should we be looking at as a community?
I think, and
besides financial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this sort of taps into financial, but it's a little more than financial, like housing. So affordable housing, so that's financial, but it's really so important because these people all live on a disability pension, and to come up with rent from that it's not doable.
I think
we've noticed with a couple of Amanda's friends who live in group homes that Amanda has maybe a better, more social, more fun quality of life.
She most definitely does.
And you know, some examples of that would be that, you know, some of her chums, there's not enough staffing at the group home for them to get a ride to come over to Amanda's party, we'll say. Her Friday night party, we'll say. And so, you know, Michelle and I, or Amanda's worker, will end up doing the driving just so they can hang out.
Last week it was two drives to accommodate friends who can't be accommodated by the
And the other thing we noticed too is I think
sad.
Every penny goes that these people that we know goes to the group home, and they never have any extra money to do
money to go out
for
and do
fun.
thing.
Like can't go to Wonderland, can't go, you know.
Yeah. And
so
goes on vacations and everything. Guys, right?
And so that's one thing we've noticed, that like,
Definitely.
she's got it a lot better than these kids. And I shouldn't say that we've not looked at every group home. That's for sure.
That's right.
But the ones that Amanda chums with, we've noticed that. You know, we've met a lot of parents over the years, and we know that some of those parents aren't capable of doing like what we've done.
You guys,
they
have
just
done
don't.
Amazing.
I'm not trying to say that we're great or anything. I'm just saying like we know some people that like it's just beyond them to
get a meeting together.
To get a
every
meeting
4
together
months
to advocate for your kid, to get your kid OTSP, to get your
So it's almost like you would need an agency that could make this so much smoother.
The plan happen.
Yeah.
So a facilitator within an agency, a case manager within an agency, instead of having case managers to maintain the system, have case managers to support the person living in the community. Yeah.
So yes, Amanda volunteers through early years, the town of Aurora, and they have a mom and tots group for 1 and 2 year olds, and they teach them sign language. And Amanda is now the sign language ambassador. And she absolutely loves it. She's always loved kids. The kids really take to her, and she's pretty proud of it.
So we ran out of battery and power. I want to thank Jason from Connectability because he did all those videos. So he did a little tour on a day that was really windy with a lot of power outages, and we made it around York Region. So thank you, Jason. Much appreciated. So we're in our last stretch. I'm just going to close this so we can see where we are. The last individual isn't here today, so Shamil's family isn't here, so we'll skip that one and we'll get hopefully more questions if that works. His model was basically living in his family home, and the supports were coming in, so on-demand support using individualized funding for staff to come in. So they schedule their support, they come in, but they're not live-in support. They come and they go. The next slide here. Okay, so what's next? Where are we going next? As the family groups meet regularly, what we've decided to do is to continue to meet before the Y-Made events that happen every 6 months. And we've decided to include other family members. So there's some other families here today that have individualized funding who would like to learn and be part of this team and to explore sharing resources, leveraging funds and working together to make costs be more effective. And so we'll be inviting other families who have individualized funding, both in York Region and Toronto, to join this network that will happen before the Y-Made events. So the next Y-Made event is September 11th. We will be having those families, I'll send out an email and invite those families who wish to come ahead of time. And we will continue to have the Y-Made events to support families in planning. So supporting you as family members to learn where to start and how to start, and networking with these families who've done it and who have some experience will be really beneficial, I think. So the other thing, I just wanted Kim to talk a little bit about the housing coordinators from the DSO. So the ministry has recognized there's a need for more support in the community. So I'm going to have Kim speak to that a little bit.
So, as Kelly mentioned, the ministry did recognize through all of the models that were funded through the Housing Task Force Demonstration Project, the benefit to families having access to someone who could help planning. So they did actually fund positions across the province. They're not robust, let's put it out there. But there are people who are actually going to take the lead in putting together toolkits for families to start them on their journey of planning. So everything you need to think about, from finances to how to find a support worker to different subsidies potentially available through government to support different models. So that's a recognition of all of the fine work that has happened through demonstration projects. As well, our two coordinators actually for the DSO Central East Region are here tonight. So Catherine Picard, if you want to wave, is actually the housing coordinator for York and Simcoe. And Stacey Martin is also here, if you want to wave. She is the housing coordinator for Durham, Albert, Port Lakes, Peterborough, and Northumberland. So they are essentially one day as a start. The ministry does recognize that it's nowhere near enough, but at least it is a start. And so the intent is for these positions to start to make some headway with municipalities, having people with developmental disabilities be on their radar for subsidized housing. Because we've heard from these families, and I'm sure you've all experienced the need for affordable housing for people who are on a limited income. Additionally, we know that families need information in order to plan. And sometimes you need to be in a room with people with like minds to know who else is in your community who wants to plan, and you might develop a partnership that way. So the two coordinators are looking at hosting events, going to family support networks, providing resources to all of you, both provincial and local, to help you start planning. So stay tuned for that. They're just in their infancy, so be kind to them as they start to learn the ropes. But they are really wanting to focus on how municipalities, as one area, really can be a partner for people with developmental disabilities who are looking to live in alternative housing models outside of homes.
Perfect, thank you. you. I just also want to mention the last point, which is our continued collaboration with the brokerage agency that we have been working with, York Support Services Network, to feed into what should be included in individualized residential supports. So as you know, the ministry has specific guidelines that they begin developing, much like they did with passports. We want to make sure that the voices of the families are heard, and so we've been partnering with York Support Services, and that's part of the process of why we're asking families to meet with us ahead of time who have individualized fundings. So ahead of time, so that we could feed the information to our TPA, our transfer payment agency, who then can feed it up to the ministry, so that they can get direct information from families rather than writing policy without the collaboration of families. So that's the hope of that. We have 15 minutes as promised for questions. I'm also just going to let you know that you'll all be receiving an email with a monkey survey on there. You receive it at each Y-Wait session. It's just the way we do things. We want your feedback, but we also want to know what you want to know next. So we are consumer driven. We want to hear from you. What do you want to learn? I've heard an idea in the room tonight was potentially, and it will be included in the monkey survey, potentially a matching kind of a discussion about how to find appropriate housemates or roommates or match people appropriately. So that will be one of the options, but please use the monkey survey as your way to tell us what you want and what you need from agencies and from other families. Okay? So I'm going to open it up for questions and kind of run around with this.
How do you guarantee actual long-term sustainability and that funding doesn't fluctuate with, let's say, provincial elections and federal elections and so forth?
Well, on an annual basis, agencies actually undergo a contract negotiation with their funder. So for us, that's the Ministry of Community Social Services. That's where having a case manager involved is integral to the plan, because it allows me to know when I go into meetings with the ministry, does the current funding level work? It can for a number of years, but needs change, costs go up, circumstances change. And so through that information that gets fed between the family and the case manager, I take that information forward to the ministry and then make a business case for additional funding.
So how long is it guaranteed for? Sorry,
so in terms of guarantee, we have two types of funding, just to explain how it works from the ministry level. We get what's called fiscal funding, which means you get the money, but it's not guaranteed year over year. But if you demonstrate the case and the need, you can get what's called annualized, which means it becomes part of a base budget of an organization, which allows it then to be a permanent arrangement. So we have always advocated for the need for sustainability for people's lives. And so the Housing Task Force families here and individuals who had fiscal funding because it was a project actually got used this year as annualized funding. So the intent is always, that's where the partnership with the transfer payment agency is important, because we can then negotiate with the ministry the fact that needs change or bills get enacted that create change for people. So that's where the partnership is so important with your agency.
Any other questions?
Just building on the last question. So with the demonstration project, will you be running some cost-benefit analysis of the various models and making recommendations in terms of which ones work the best, both financially but socially as well, and then making recommendations to the government to provide funding for those types of models because they're more sustainable than others? You know, as a parent, I have the same question about sustainability. So are you going to look at sort of evaluating the demo models and recommending some, and with the goal in mind of sustainability?
So there was an evaluation component built in to the provincial demonstration project. So we did actually provide feedback to an independent third party, I think she was, and then we also had a phone interview. I think our perspective was all of these models were successful, and the benefit to the entire community was that individualized funding should be an option for families. Some people, group homes are an option, but for some it's not. And what we really wanted to identify to the ministry was that people have a right to choice. And so let's make sure they have a choice.
Just a supplemental. So, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. What happens if you're never received individualized funding?
So I think the one thing that I've heard that the ministry has taken away from this entire demonstration project provincially, not just the models here, is that we have a group of people who are very motivated to do individualized planning. I don't think the ministry in the past really understood how invested people are in creating meaningful lives for people as opposed to giving them services. So I can't tell you who's going to get funding, but I can certainly tell you that the ministry has identified that individualized funding is the way to go in the future. I don't know who's going to get it, but they are clearly making it a service choice for the future.
Yeah. It's on the DSO document.
This is a question for someone who isn't here, because Stinder isn't here. But maybe you can answer it, Kelly, and maybe you can't. You mentioned that she has a model that she has supports coming and going and living. How is that working in terms of, I'm in the same situation, so how is that working? I'm finding it a bit of a struggle in terms of sustainability.
One of the things that we're doing as a result of her model as well as other families' model is we put through a request for interest to agencies because families were saying the same thing. Keeping, maintaining, finding staff is very difficult. It's a full-time job. So we put forth a request for interest, and we have received replies, and we actually have people scheduled on September 11th to come and meet with families from agencies to have a conversation, only opening conversation about what families are looking for from agencies as a partner. So we do have right now 3 agencies who are willing to have that conversation and willing to begin partnering with families so that they can group coordinated staffing model between families even. You know, there might be 8 staff that are trained to work within this geographical area, and they'll move around from family to family, and they'll each be individually trained for each person's home based on the home and the values within the home. She has had the same concerns as I hear from many families, including yours, that it's difficult having people come in and out of your own home. And so I know that she's moving towards a different model in the future.
Well, it's working.
It's working.
There's some challenges attached.
Yeah, a lot of challenges.
I have a feeling that North is more progressive than the South from Toronto, and exactly when we decided to go with this model because the group home was just a disaster for our son. I still cannot find the agency who understands what I'm talking about this individual model. Ministry, they had to allow us, because it was a case of neglect, severe neglect. They had to allow us, and luckily I knew about individualized funding, and I was saying, I know it's done for the others, you have to do it for him. But I'm still completely lost, and I probably have to talk to Brendan, because I'm having agency Skyline, which never dealt with that, and I'm getting so many obstacles in this process. And I'm just thinking how that's not like widely recognized as a model. And now if I go to another agency, they just don't know what to do. They are pushing me to go practically with TPA agency, which would take over, practically would be like a group home. And I'm very adamant, and I want to have control over people supporting my son, because for him this is the most important. Like, is it any, it has to be some general idea and some general recognition of this model on all regions, and this is when I'm having an issue with anything.
So the beauty of individualized funding is there's the potential for you to partner with an agency in any area. So I think, much like passports, which has some portability to it, there can always be a case for wanting to partner with a particular agency. My advice, just as a service agency, the most important thing for all of you to do, because you have to partner with an agency, that's just the model, find an agency that most closely matches your values. Because it's like a marriage. We have to work together. We won't always agree, but we have to find the happy medium. As an agency, I have constraints under legislation that I'm required to do, like quality assurance. Do I think I need to sit through somebody's home, check the temperature, check food? No, I don't. It's the person's home. But do I need to make sure that person is physically safe, that the exits are clear? Yes, I do. Which means I have to be able, not me, but the royal we, have to enter the home at some point just to make sure things are safe. And we do that every 4 to 6 weeks. That's negotiated the best time that works. But that's the values piece. Are you okay with us coming into your home? Because we have to. That's our agency's value, because we want to make sure that the physical environment is safe. But if you have a problem with that, which is your right, then maybe we're not the right agency to work with. So I just think it's very important that if you do want to partner with an agency, shop around and figure out what your values are and who most closely aligns with that. It doesn't mean that you're not going to hit bumps, because you are. We've hit bumps, right? And we got through them. But we've gone through them, and what we do is we meet and we talk about it, and emails go out saying, you know what, we've agreed that this is now an admissible expense. So now everybody knows this is an admissible expense, because we've come to some kind of agreement. But it is not an arrangement that you do by yourself. You can't. So I encourage you to think about if there are other agencies out there that maybe match your values or can provide a service that you think would work for you, then you advocate for that and find and see how you can get that agency to become your partner.
There's a question over here.
A little similar to the previous question. Based on your experience with the families and what I anticipate would be a great option for many families, as I see it for my daughter, how early do you think we should start planning for this? Because we know with other type of funds, everything becomes a wait list at some point, because there's a limited amount of funds and a great number of families who may want to access them. Just ideas.
It's never too early, is my advice. Simply because there are some things you can access early on, like the RDSP, right? So the sooner you start saving for something like an RDSP, the better. But really, I know one of the things that as a service agency and that the ministry actually endorses as part of a transition plan is really starting to look at age 14. You need to start earlier. Things like thinking about accessing camps and you know, getting that whole social experience. But the real planning actually starts at high school, because it's an opportunity to start developing some real life skills, some real social skills, maybe check out whether employment's an option, volunteering is an option. It's a really great way to test out what the future could be in a really supportive environment with a bit of a safety.
I just want to add a little bit to that even there's going to be quite a few tools in the housing toolkit also to support families in starting early. But what I have seen as a planner is the earlier you begin increasing the self-reliance of the individual, increasing the independence, trialing some respite locations, having them kind of sleep over at a friend's house, all those things allow them to become more independent and gain confidence, the better off they are, and the easier it is for the parent, because 90% of the time, even though we say how early do we have to start for them, it's really about how early we have to start as ourselves for parents, right? It's hard to let go. And I talk to lots of parents who have a really big time and a big struggle letting go. So starting early for yourself is the important thing. Any other questions? We have around 3 more minutes.
Hi, I just want to clarify. I just want to ask a question because I was a little bit confused about individual funding and passport funding. Are they the same or are they two separate funding?
So passport funding is individualized funding. It was actually the first iteration of individualized funding, but it's very specific. It's for community participation and for respite. There is a movement now, and some of the families here have that, individualized funding to support a residential model. So it does not necessarily group home, but funding to support someone's home, whatever that looks like. So they are different.
And you can have both. Right? So if you have passports funding and then later on you get individualized residential model, it might fill up different portions of the day, right?
right?
You don't apply for it the way you apply for passport. You create a proposal, and it's a very weird, specific thing with a window of opportunity.
There's proposals, but there's also the checklist on the DSO. It could be a preferred option.
Yes, so there is the ability to identify that as your preferred choice when you actually have your supports intensity scale application for development services and supports.
So should you call YSSN and update our...
So if you are actually someone who's already been confirmed as eligible for development services, you can call the DSO Central East Region and identify the fact that you are interested in having individualized funding as a service model.
And then
well, part of what happens is an identification to the ministry of the need, which I think is essential. The ministry doesn't know what it doesn't know. So by raising their awareness that this is an interest that people have in terms of planning, it will perhaps influence where future investments go. I also think by having events and you have like-minded people can pool resources that maybe they didn't, one person has a certain type of resource and someone else has passport funding, and together you might be able to cobble something that is a preliminary step towards a longer term one.
So is the window always open, Kelly, for us to put a proposal, or is there a call for proposals?
The DSO and the ministry doesn't collect proposals per se. What they do is they want to know who's interested, and then people are hopefully planning and creating plans as they go, so that when a call happens, we know who those people are and you have a plan that you can enact. Because the ministry often says, here's money, spend it tomorrow. So it's important to have a plan in place as best you can.
And if you have the plan in place, usually as a planner myself, I do send it in to the agency that's a passport agency and CC other people so that people are aware that there is a desire for some type of resources, etc. Just to put it on file, just in case. I have two questions. I'm going to make sure that we get both of them. He is the mic first, but then I'll pass it to you. Okay.
I wanted to ask about direct funding and how it plays into this whole thing, because we applied for direct funding and basically the requirements to get it were unreasonable in our case, because they wanted my brother to understand, the ethics behind employment, the laws behind hiring practices and whatnot, for him to be able to pass accounting laws, accounting best practices, so that for him to be able to qualify for direct funding so that he could manage his own staff, which I think is an unreasonable expectation. And how is that feasible for this individualized funding model?
So I think the direct funding that you're referencing is the direct funding that's actually through the Ministry of Health, which is through the LID. And yes, well, that's okay, but it's an important distinction. So there are many sources of individualized funding through different ministries, and they all have different criteria, which must be incredibly frustrating for people who are applying. So the Ministry of Health funding does require people to have the ability to direct their own supports, which unfortunately, for many people who have perhaps limitations in their education, prohibits them from accessing that funding. But the individualized funding referenced here is from the Ministry of Community and Social Services. So if your brother is actually eligible for development services and has gone through the DSO, which is the way to get in, then you can call them and just identify the fact that you're interested in individualized funding, and that puts them on the list. And then you can think about planning. It's a different ministry with a different criteria.
Just to give people some hope also for that, is we are having conversations with the Municipal Health Direct Funding team in Toronto regarding microboards. So the next microboard event, we're trying to pull them in so they can understand it, because they were very interested in the concept of microboards, assisting a person with making decisions, hiring and firing staff, etc. So we've got their ears. We're hoping for the best.
I'd also say that there's an obligation on the Ministry of Health's part to accommodate, and that's built into our legislative frameworks already. And we're aware of many individuals with area needs right across the sort of spectrum that have been successful in implementing direct funding through the Ministry of Health. So I'm surprised to hear that you're facing these barriers right now, because there is an obligation on the ministry's part to facilitate some sort of solution.
How do you guys connect again?
Okay, so in more concrete terms, what kind of timeline are we looking at? I'll be meeting with Kelly in the very near future. For my son, Jonathan, who's here, he's also another Jonathan who's 32, very, quite high functioning. So what are we looking at from start to finish?
In terms of accessing funding?
Yeah. Oh, the process. Yeah.
So it's not an easy process. I mean, to be perfectly frank. One of the main things that have happened that are positive is the passport funding piece. So if you're not a passport recipient yet, you're waiting. If you're eligible, you will be receiving $5,000 as a start.
Check.
Okay, good stuff. If you've identified individualized funding and you're planning, so you're a step ahead for sure. Unfortunately, the one thing that is difficult to predict is when the ministry releases money. And it's further complicated by the fact that we have a brand new government and we don't know what the mandate is, where the priorities are. The one thing I can say about the prior government is they actually did have a commitment to people with developmental disabilities because they actually put a fair bit of money into the system. However, we have a new government and they will have to be briefed at minimum on the portfolio. We don't have a new minister yet. The bureaucrats down at corporate ministry office have to brief the minister on the priorities of the file. And then there has to be a determination if the prior government's commitment is something they want to maintain. So I can't give you a timeline, unfortunately, because we are in this very strange period right now with the new government. I want to encourage people, though, to keep planning, because if you don't plan and money comes down, then you won't be ready. But if you are planning and money comes down, you will be ready.
Thank you very much. Are there any, it's 8:34, so I just want to be aware, because I know that your construction crew is waiting to go work on that washroom again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off the question period, and if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to come to any one of us, any one of the families, and Kim and Brendan will probably hang around for about 20 minutes and 15 minutes, and hopefully answer your questions. So thank you very much for this evening.